and welcome in everyone to this episode of Craze's Corner. We have our fantasy football award show today. Our first show is going to be MVPs and value picks, guys you got at great ADP on draft day. And the second show, which you can go find on the YouTube channel as well, is going to be Bus and Rookie of the Year picks for fantasy wise. So you're going to want to make sure you watch both of these episodes. But first, we're going to start out with MVPs, guys that you know, cornerstones of your teams, guys that were on lots of championship rosters, guys that helped to carry you to a fantasy football championship, hopefully multiple fantasy football championships. For me, we got to start off with my 101 at the beginning of the season. We got to talk about my guy who was drafted in Carolina and now plays for the 49ers, and that's Christian McCaffrey. RB1 on the season, kind of exactly what we expected. He played 16 games, got hurt. He got hurt in the championship game, so he didn't quite have the performance we were hoping for. You know, maybe you had him. His 11 points wasn't quite enough, but it was still a good enough performance. You're probably okay in your fantasy football championship. He was super consistent throughout the year. All of his running back finishes were above RB15 on the week, except for his championship matchup, which was RB22. So when you're getting that out of the running back position, you know, he was on his historic touchdown streak. I really think if you drafted Christian McCaffrey, you know, he was on the highest percentage of first place rosters. According to Yahoo Fantasy, 23% of first place rosters had Christian McCaffrey on them. And I think it was something like 40% of people who were playing in those championship games had him on the roster as well. So he was definitely a high percentage player on those teams. Do you guys, you know, you guys obviously picked other players, but you guys think Christian McCaffrey is a good reason to be the fantasy football MVP?
Yep. Yeah. I think, you know, I was a little.
Actually, no.
That guy.
Did he finish the game last week? He did not finish the game, right?
No.
So that was the little thing, right? Because it flared up. Not that he's been injury problem since he's come to the 49ers, but in fantasy, when the one game you needed him most, he didn't finish the game.
Yeah, we're gonna see that was Will's pick. Will's pick had a great fantasy playoffs, and so did Zach. So we're gonna stay at the running back position first. Zach, you had a guy here. He's honestly in contention to be one of my other, awards here. But who do you think the fantasy football MVP is this season?
Yeah, you know, because you have that word value. That's what the V stands for, right? So you got this guy on the waiver wire. It's Kyren Williams, running back for the Los Angeles Rams. You know, I mean, you watched last week, 2 touchdowns in the biggest game of the year. And he's just been consistent throughout the entire playoffs and just an absolute joy to watch. The only thing that almost made me not select him was that time he missed. But if you look at every game that he started, RB1 in the championship. So that's kind of the most valuable part. But I think it's just the fact that he was a waiver guy. And you basically, if he was playing, you started him and he scored a touchdown almost every single game he played. So yeah, Kyren Williams. And in Dynasty, shout out to everyone that scooped him up his rookie year in Dynasty, because probably got him in late second, third round, maybe, because no one was touching him. Everyone thought he was too undersized for the NFL and stuck behind all these other running backs on a roster that was typically known to have a coach that messes around with his running back. So yeah, shout out Kyren. Let's go Notre Dame.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought Kyren was going to be great coming into the league, and then it really was a rough rookie season. He ended up on a lot of dynasty waiver wires at that as well. Going into the season, there wasn't too much. He was going to be, you know, maybe my value pick, my value guy you got either in a deep league at a late ADP, or he's a guy you got off waivers. And he was second to only Christian McCaffrey when it comes to percentage of top first place finishers, and he's at 18.8% of Yahoo leagues. The winner had Kyren Williams, which is it's a crazy percentage. Anywhere in that 15 to 25% of championship teams had this guy. That's 1 in 5 had Kyren Williams. So obviously he had a high impact. Like you said, you got him off waivers. And RB1 championship week, and even before that, he was putting up monster games, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, whatever you needed from Kyren Williams. The only thing was the injuries throughout the year. But other than that, yeah, Kyren Williams definitely has a argument for fantasy football MVP. And if anyone hadn't have brought him up for MVP, he definitely would have been my value pick, because we definitely need to talk about Kyron, because he had a great year. Will, what do you think about Kyron Williams' year? Do you think he's going to be able to do this going into next year?
No, because I think they're going to screw up the running back position again. Right? And everybody will be high. He might be, then on the offseason, he could be a number 1 pick in some drafts. At least top 5, right? Because people are going to try to go with what they think, this is predictive of the future. But Zach was saying, I'm a little worried that, he wrote a hot hand. But will he do that next year? Or are they going to draft another running back, sign another running back, and put him in and do this running back by committee again? So, the great year by him. Congratulations to him. But I would be nervous about overvaluing him next year. Even if it bit me in the butt a little bit, I'd be concerned about that.
Yeah, Zach, what do you think? You picked him for your fantasy MVP. Are you confident with him dynasty-wise value going into next season, or you think they screw up as well?
This entire the 2 games that he played. Sorry, there's 4 games that he didn't score a touchdown. In every other game, he scored a touchdown or 2. So that's going to really swing like his draft value going into next season. But touchdowns are one of those stats that are kind of sticky, or they're not so sticky and could easily go down next year and severely kill his draft value of where you get him next season. But dynasty value, if you have him, this seems like a sell for me. I don't know. If I have Kyron, I think I'm going to try to move him. He still is a smaller running back on the Rams, and he's already shown that he could get injured. So, I don't know. It's tough. So it's more so I want to just celebrate this season he had. But I'm more on the Will side. I'm not sure if this is like a Saquon kind of running back that you can rely on for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I would try to trade for him last week before our finals in our dynasty league. I was like, I don't believe Kyron's going to be anything after this year. Maybe the owner doesn't as well. I think he'll still be like the RB 1A, 1B type thing, but I think they're going to draft someone or bring someone in free agency. We don't see a lot of what we saw from Kyron this year, and I don't think the Rams are going to let him do that going forward. So I was trying to get him, but the owner said he thinks he's going to be the clear-cut RB1 next year, so he wasn't willing to move him for what I was willing to pay. But I definitely tried to get him, and his RB1 performance definitely would have helped me, would have put me a little bit closer to winning our league. And let's talk about some bad things that happened to you guys. We want to hear about them on the media app. You can download the media app on the Google Play and the App Store. It's a virtual press conferencing app that allows you to host a virtual press conference from your phone and post it to any social media platform. You can change your background. You can input mics in front of you. People can ask you questions. You can ask other people questions. You can ask athletes questions. Send them money to answer your questions. You should definitely go check it out. And you can let us know, did you have any heartbreaks or any, close calls where you did end up winning? Let us know on the media app. It's available on the Google Play and the App Store. And now we are going to be talking about our value picks, guys that you got at a great ADP and ended up returning on their value. So these are guys who were going later in drafts, ended up being, top 10, top 5 at their position. And I'm going to start us out with the RB2, RB3, depending on your scoring formats. This is a guy that I know Zach loves, a guy Zach has in our Dynasty League because he got him in a trade off of me because I didn't expect this kind of season coming from him. And that's Raheem Mostert. He was the RB41 when it came to ADP on Fantasy Pros, and that came out to 130th overall. And you got the RB2, RB3, depending on whether PPR, half-point PPR, or standard scoring formats. This is a guy that was scoring 2 touchdowns a game for multiple games this year, even had a 3-touchdown, 42-point game. This is a guy that if you had him, you were probably doing pretty good. He was healthy for most of the season. Him and Achane were both able to be productive. The touchdowns were there, so he was consistent. He's a guy that helped your fantasy team. You didn't have to pay up big to get him at the draft. He was also on a lot of fantasy contending teams. Only thing about that is that he also had a lower fantasy football championship game where he finished as the RB21, only on 29% of the snaps. So that definitely hurts a little bit. But I think overall, he was still probably by far and away one of the best values in the draft. Zach, what do you think about Raheem Mostert? Were you happy as a Dolphins fan with his performance, and did you have him in any of your other leagues?
No, I didn't have him. However, I did manage to play him twice in my highest money league, and both weeks were just like devastating games where he had multiple touchdowns. So that was always great to walk into that buzzsaw. But like you mentioned, yeah, I have him in League One. I got that trade. I always forget. I know it was Kenny Pickett and Raheem Mostert
for a first and a second,
which
ended up being Anthony Richardson and Dalton Kincaid, and then I flipped Richardson for Stroud in the first.
Yeah, so you definitely made out in the long haul, but for me, it was a good plug and play piece there, and that's basically what Mostert was this year. I mean, I don't know where he was drafted in redrafts, but I remember us doing the mock draft episode, and I think me and you were like late round. You took, I want to say you took Jeff Wilson,
probably,
and then I came back around, and I feel like I remember I sarcastically saying, "Well, I'm going to take the starting running back for the Dolphins, Raheem Mostert," because I honestly felt that was going to be the case. I love Jeff Wilson. I think I've made that pretty clear over the past couple of years. But at the same time, Raheem Mostert is just, if he's healthy, man, he's great. And it's been a fun ride to watch him. And I would love to see what his final ADP was going into the season.
He was the RB41, ADP 130.
RB40, yeah. So it's hard to say that anybody else can top that value. But yeah, love me some Raheem Mostert.
Anything you want to add to the Raheem Mostert train, Will?
Oh, Miami was fun this year.
Yeah.
It was fun for fantasy. It just was. Like, if you had to tell me what the NFL team that was the fantasy MVP for fun, it was the Miami Dolphins for fantasy players this year. Because you never knew what you're going to get. Good or bad. You never knew what you're going to get.
Emphasis on the was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been rough past couple weeks. But yeah, unless you had Jeff Wilson, I thought he was going to be, the starting running back going into the season. It was Mostert, who had his best year in the NFL at age 31. That doesn't happen for a running back ever.
He set the Dolphins franchise record for most touchdowns in the season by Miami Dolphins. So
yeah, and then he almost his time in Miami was so much better, 30 and 31, than it was in San Francisco. It's just kind of crazy what some guys can accomplish at their age. Zach, who is your best fantasy value pick?
Another brother in his 30s as well, and that's going to be Mike Evans, the wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You couldn't have asked for, shocker, Mike Evans had another consistent season. Stop me if you've heard that before. But I think the difference this year, and even last year too, was the absence, the quarterback play, right? You have Baker coming into the season, and you're not really sure. People are like, maybe Blaine Gabbert, like I think he's still there, or one of those random backups.
They have Kyle Trask as their back.
Kyle Trask, there you go, yeah. One of those forgettable faces. Yeah. But yeah, and so people were kind of like, they were off of Mike Evans. He's a 30-year-old wide receiver that, can you really have another great season, again? And turns out the answer is yes. And I think if you took Mike Evans, it's funny, we're going through my League One roster here, but which shows you how fantasy sucks sometimes, because I got bounced in the first round, but he was solid all year, and another guy that had just another great touchdown season. You guys know I'm a gambling man. The Mike Evans anytime touchdown prop was was a guaranteed bet every week. So
yeah, it was definitely a good value. Definitely questions with Baker, but he had the third most yards he's ever had, as well as tied for the second most touchdowns he's ever had in a season. Finished as a half-point PPR wide receiver 4. So you were probably able to get him as your wide receiver 3, possibly even wide receiver 4 in the drafts, and that's crazy value to get. I think Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield in particular definitely outplayed everyone's expectations, except for Kyle and Corey, the Oklahoma fans here on the network. They always knew Baker Mayfield was going to be amazing, but everyone else kind of tempered their expectations on this Tampa offense because of him. But Mike Evans looked great. Like we said, the yards were there, the touchdowns were there. I got him in one of my leagues. I had him, Keenan Allen, and Tyreek Hill. And then Keenan Allen got hurt. Mike Evans put up a dud and got bounced out of that league. But it was a good run through the regular season, had the best record there. Will, any thoughts on Mike Evans before we move on to the player?
I'll own it. I didn't think he was going to have a good year. Stayed away from him. I've had him previous years, and I was like, Baker scared me off. And he put it up with Baker. Whew.
And Baker's probably going to be back next year. Probably expect a similar thing for Mike Evans. I think he'll be another value next year. I don't think he's going to go with a top 10 wide receiver like he finished this year in drafts. And that means you're probably going to be able to get him as your wide receiver 2. And Mike Evans as your wide receiver 2 is probably going to be good. Only advice, if you ever have Mike Evans on your team, don't play him when they play New Orleans. Just never a good matchup, even in his second best year ever, if that's what you want to call this past year. He still sucked against New Orleans, didn't put up more than 10 points in either game. But outside of that, Mike Evans, fantastic. Definitely a value. Will, who's your value pick here?
I'm going to show some tight end love. Going with Laporta with the Lions. And part of the reason I'm putting him here is for the other show, I got a different rookie of the year. But look, when you're leading the tight ends with touchdowns in your rookie year, and I want to say he's 16th according to Fantasy Pros. He was the 16th average rank of draft position was 16th. This is one of the positions that people always said was hard, one of the harder transitions from college to pro, and it may take a year or two. I mean, there's still Kyle Pitts owners waiting for him to show up and do something, anything. And this kid came in with a little bit of hype, but no one thought this. And if you got him, and if you happen to be like in our league where half-point bonus for receptions and stuff, look, this guy might have brought you a championship. And I think his value was it was a rookie. No one valued him. You know, if you were drafting and you were in a dynasty thinking, okay, 2 or 3 years from now, but he leading tight ends with touchdowns this year in the league. Okay,
he was the tight end 1. In half-point PPR scoring this past season, which is
was
crazy.
There a rookie? I don't know. Was there any other rookie that led any of their positions this year?
No, I don't think so.
Laporta finished as tight end 1.
Yeah, according to Sleeper. In the league I'm in, at least, he was a tight end 1.
Yeah, Fantasy Pros has him as tight end number 1 right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there you go. He finished ahead of Travis Kelce, George Kittle. Tight ends really broke the mold this year. You know, as Will said, the adage coming into the draft and coming into the season is rookie tight ends never do anything. They always need an extra year or two to get acclimated to the NFL. And we saw it with Laporta, with Kincaid. When you use the tight ends right, they look great. Even Michael Mayer, he looked good with whatever he had going on in Las Vegas there. Not really had the best situation to work with, but he looked good. Laporta looked good. He was definitely a value if you grabbed him maybe as your tight end 2. You were extremely ecstatic playing him throughout the draft. And like I said, if you're in a tight end premium league, something you should look at if you got any dynasty leagues, add a little bit more value to the tight end position. He would be a very valuable asset to have. Zach, anything you want to say here before we end the show about Sam Laporta?
Not too much more, but man, what a great season. And when you can get a draft value at the tight end position, it's almost like an extra advantage because the tight ends, like it was a different season this year, but mostly it's the 2 guys and the rest kind of suck. So if you get that extra edge, that can really help you out in redraft.
Yeah. This year it was kind of like there was a few guys that were like Laporta, where you have some bad weeks, some good weeks. Kelsey was inconsistent. It really was a tough year at the tight end. Kincaid was good, inconsistent. Kittle, inconsistent. There really wasn't.
Hey, let's give a little love to Hawkinson with 4 running backs,
Hawkinson was-
putting up the numbers.
That's why I was
putting up what
shocked
he
when
put
you
up.
when you said Laporta was tight end 1. I could have I trust you guys, but I'm saying like I feel like TJ Hawkinson had such a crazy year.
Tight end 3 for TJ Hawkinson.
Wow, is it because did he miss time or something? Like,
well, he missed the last 2 games of the season, and then had his other game cut short.
Okay, so maybe.
And then the touchdowns weren't there. It was all PPR value. He only had 4 touchdowns on the year, where Laporta had 9. So that's definitely
If Dobbs would have just
if Kirk didn't get hurt,
you're giving me nightmares.
If Kirk didn't get hurt,
he's tied in 1.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. That was definitely a heartbreaker for Hawkinson. And if you had him when he got hurt, that was even worse. Like I said, that's going to be the end of this show. If you haven't watched the other show yet, it's going to be Bus and Rookie of the Year pick. Sam Laporta won't be on that show, but we did manage to sneak him on this show. So like I said, go check that show out. It'll be on the network. Hope you guys enjoyed this show. If you already watched the other one, hope you enjoyed that one as well. Like I said, we are out. Hope you won your fantasy football championships. We will be back next week.
Let's go Ravens.
Let's go.
Let's go Ravens.